When you are designing your base, there are 3 things you need to keep in mind. First, there's the horde. In the past, I have told you that the best way to deal with the horde was to make sure all of your outer walls were level 1 and to avoid your base when you saw this. Now I'm advising you the complete opposite. Since the last update, the horde cannot break through level 3 walls. So the best way to deal with the horde is naturally to make sure all of your walls are level 3. However, this is going to take a while. In fact, if you have a big base, this will easily take you over 100 trips to the green rock zone. So in the meantime, I have 2 suggestions for you. First, when you're upgrading your walls, I recommend waiting to upgrade a wall until you have the resources to upgrade it all the way to level 3, so that you don't give the zombie horde a chance to destroy your level 2 walls. Second, I recommend setting a trap for the horde. I didn't do mine perfectly, but I don't want to wait another 24 hours to post this video, so I'll just explain what you should do. For those of you who don't know, the welcome mat allows you to set your spawn point for when you enter your base. It also allows you to choose the spawn point of the horde. So before the horde gets to you, move your mat to the section of your land that you want the zombies to come from. Zombies now die instantly when they come in contact with a stone wall. So you want to place your stone wall so that the horde reaches them first. You don't have to kill all the horde with your trap, but you want to get as many as possible. It takes 10 zombies to destroy one of your level 2 walls, so if you can kill or redirect enough of them, then you won't lose any of your more expensive walls. Now, some people deal with this problem by not building any walls at all, which this isn't a bad tactic because until multiplayer is released, there are no consequences to not having walls. On the other hand, if Last Day on Earth is speaking the truth when they say that they are going to try not to have to reset everything, then those people without walls will have a lot of catching up to do. The second thing you need to consider in base construction is your workflow. When you come home from gathering resources, it is extremely helpful to have a good workflow to your base. In my opinion, the most convenient thing you can do is to have a door right in front of your main spawn point. Then I suggest starting your workflow from that spawn point. I think the beginning of your workflow should start with your woodworking room because it's the most common resource you'll need to get, and then your stone, followed by your furnaces, and then your sewing machines. But honestly, it is really up to what makes the most sense in your mind. The most important aspect of making your base have a good workflow is that you remember where everything is and that you develop a system for putting everything away quickly. If you don't create a system or you don't remember where you put things, then you'll find yourself wasting a lot of time running back and forth putting things away after each run. I suggest building lots of chests. The more chests you have, the more you can separate things by type, which is helpful for remembering where they are. A few other suggestions I have, which may be pretty obvious to some of you, are put your furnaces near your workbench. Put your shower and your rain catcher together. I put 4 bottles in my rain catcher, and then every time I visit, I drink 2 of them and then shower, and then put the 4 empty bottles back in the rain catcher. Also, put your tanning and meat drying racks together, because when you have one of those resources, you will probably have the other one as well. Lastly, I would suggest putting your gardens next to your fire pits. As I mentioned earlier, this is probably pretty obvious to some, but I felt like I had to mention it. The last thing that you need to keep in mind when you are building your base is the least important right now, but will eventually be the most important: protecting yourself from players trying to get your stuff. This will eventually be the most important thing about your base. It doesn't matter how awesome you are at playing this game or how well you've collected resources. If it is easy to steal from you, then you are always going to be poor. I have 4 suggestions on designing your base to protect yourself against other players. Tip number 1. Hide everything. Information is power. The more they know about your base, the easier it will be for them to figure out your strategy. This is why I use what I'm calling the Great Wall strategy. This wall around my base is helpful against the zombie horde because it lets me regulate which walls I have to repair, but it is only the third and least important reason I use this strategy. The first reason I built it is because when someone approaches my base, it is going to look like this. And then when they go to the effort of destroying one of my walls, my base is going to look like this. I'm forcing them to use C4 even just to get a peek inside. This brings us to tip number 2 and the second reason that I use the Great Wall tactic. Make them spend more than you do. When you look at the traps that they're going to have for us to make, they're expensive. Having a minefield on the outside of your base will allow any punk just wandering around to set off your traps. This will cost you a lot of resources